Today I'm going to talk to you about how freaking weird mushrooms are. And actually, the subject of today's video is mycology, but I love mushrooms. I've loved mushrooms ever since I was a kid, and you'd see them animated in a show where a gnome or a mouse was hiding from the rain underneath the mushroom. I just think they're so freaking cool. I've always been just sort of drawn to them. I think that I didn't even know how fascinating they were until I got older and learned some of the facts about them that I'm going to tell you today, but I've always just kind of been drawn to the aesthetic of it and the fairy tale, fairy-esque woodland magic of fungus. So yes, in case you're wondering, fungi or fungi, I've heard them pronounced both ways. I kind of like fungi because of all the puns you can make with it, and so that's what I will be calling them. I will be calling them fungi for the duration of this video, but if you say fungi, that's totally fine. The main thing you need to know about fungus of any kind is it's straight up crazy. Like, here's the deal about this. Fungus is wild. It's just one of the most inexplicable parts of our planet. We cannot, figure it out, really. And, the fact that we have this thing that isn't a plant, it's not an animal, but it has elements of both of those. It's made of chitin, which is what insect exoskeletons are made of. And the part that we see, the part that pops up, that's not even the mushroom. That's not even the fungus. And we'll get to that in a little bit. What's interesting about what I just said, that discovering that fungus was actually more closely related to animals than to plants, that was a discovery that was made in 1969. And that's when they actually decided to separate mycology from just botany, because up until 1969, which was a wild year for a lot of reasons, they just considered it as a branch or a wing of botany, but it became its own thing. Mycology, which is from mucus, which is fungus, and logia, which is study of, obviously, so it's the study of fungus. And something that's cool is apparently back in the day, like in the 1800s and early 1900s, and even, around that area, if you studied mushrooms, if you studied fungus, you had to have a weird name, apparently, because some of these people are Elias Magnus Fries and Christian Hendrik Persoon and Anton de Berry and Elizabeth Eaton Morse and Beatrix Potter, actually. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but Beatrix Potter, besides writing, the Peter Rabbit books, was an avid mycologist. And just, she was interested in so many different things, and a very accomplished artist and a lot of stuff. She was a cool lady. Maybe I'll make a video about Beatrix Potter. But the study of fungus goes back even further than that. Obviously, humans have been using fungus for as long as we've been humans, essentially. As far back as we can go into the archaeological record, we find that the human use of fungus for lots of different reasons is just apparent, whether it's to start fires with a special tree shelf fungus in Romania, or whether it's to use it for traditional folk medicine. We've kind of always found a way, or just food. We've used fungus in a lot of different ways. Or has fungus used us? Because we'll talk about that in a second. Anyway, Euripides, who lived from 480 to 406 BC, is the first written account of mushrooms and fungus. And then we see it come through the just historical record a lot before getting to modern mycology, what it is, which there's a wealth of knowledge about. And we have our modern mycologists. I do want to read you this quote from 1552 by Jerem Bloch, what he wrote about fungus. He says, "Fungi and truffles are neither herbs, nor roots, nor flowers, nor seeds, but merely the superfluous moisture or earth of trees or rotten wood, and of other rotten things. This is plain from the fact that all fungi and truffles, especially those that are used for eating, grow most commonly in thundery and wet weather." Well, guess what, Jerome Black? I also grow most commonly in thundery and wet weather. I like thundery weather. So, uses of fungus are just innumerable, and they're only growing every single day. Obviously, we know about the toxins that some of them can have. They can be highly poisonous, which, a lot of times when they call a mushroom poisonous, it's just that it'll give you some gastrointestinal upset. Other times when they call them poisonous, they mean that they will straight up kill you, like with some select species, like the death cap. But they're also a great source of medicines. We get drugs like penicillin, cyclosporin, griseofulin, cephalosporin. I don't even know how to say most of these things. Psilocybin. These are all drugs that have come from molds or fungi. They are amazing, amazing things. They also, something interesting about them is that they are incredibly effective at removing pollutants from the world. Pollutants from petroleum waste and even nuclear waste has been shown to be remediated through the use of fungus. They are incredible things. You shouldn't eat the fungus after they've processed the nuclear waste, because that waste is now in the fungus, so maybe don't eat that unless you want to become Fungi, the superhero. Hey, listen, I didn't write that down. That was on the spot, I promise, and that's probably why it was terrible. So the other kind of cool stuff that we get from fungus is, like, I don't know if you knew that there are bioluminescent fungus. There's fungus that glows. I think we've all heard of the fungus that turns ants and other bugs into zombies, which literally somehow takes command of their instincts and their brain. And obviously that was made popular by recent fiction, but this is sort of true, incredibly bizarre fact about our world, that some of this fungus has adapted that way. It's wild, and the reproduction of this fungus is interesting. And actually, a lot of fungus has wild ways to reproduce, not just through spores that get caught up in the wind and land somewhere else, like the common way, but for example, truffles, their spores are buried underground, and the only way that they're going to get spread is by something that eats them, which is why they smell as delicious as possible. That is their evolutionary strategy for truffles underground, to just smell so irresistible that an animal will dig for them, eat them, and then spread the spores. Like, that's their evolutionary tactic. Another one is, you've probably heard of the leafcutter ants that farm a type of fungus. And what happens is, these ants cut leaves, they feed the leaves to the fungus, and the fungus grows on the leaves and produces food for these ants. The ants also carry some kind of, it helps antibacteria, it helps the ants just be healthier all around. What's interesting is, I just read an article that put it the other way around. It didn't say that the ants were farming the fungus. It was essentially presenting it that the fungus was keeping the ants as kind of pets to take care of them, as servants. Like, it was the fungus that had manipulated the ants into bringing it food and taking care of it, and in return it fed them. So it was literally like the fungus had its herd of ants instead. And that's actually really interesting way to think about it, because a lot of people have talked about fungus as possessing a certain type of intelligence, and we've done studies of this. Slime mold, which has no sort of brain power and shouldn't be able to process information in any way that we can kind of understand, can solve problems. It can navigate through mazes. There was an experiment in Japan where they had a map of Japan, and they put nutrients at the major cities, where the cities would be on the map, and the fungus found kind of the most efficient route to each food, and it kind of mirrored the speed train routes that are actually in Japan. And these sorts of tests are amazing and incredible. We're talking about a kind of potential consciousness that's not like ours. It's not a conscious type of consciousness like that we have, but it is very real in the way that it processes information and transmits information. Trees, for example, are usually intertwined in fungus. I think about 30% of soil is fungal in nature, because the actual fungus, like I said before, isn't the fruiting body that comes up above. It's not the mushroom that pops up above ground. The actual body, like the entity of mushrooms, or the mycelium. It's this web, this incredibly complex web underneath the ground. And I've studied this a lot, and we might make this a two-parter video if it gets too long, but I might just do a sequel to this video because there's so much to talk about. And maybe I'll make another video about the discoveries currently of the things that we're discovering. But one of the coolest things I know about mycelium is that it will actually help plants communicate to each other. Trees will send messages and nutrients to each other through, like, trees that are disconnected are connected through the mycelium, and they actually communicate with each other. And it's been shown that the trees will actually preferentially treat their own family. Trees that are their own descendants, that are related to them, they will give them more nutrients than the other trees. Somehow they're communicating in a way that we don't really fully understand, and it's all through this kind of Mother Earth brain, which is the fungus, which is the mycelium that's under there. I think that 1993 Super Mario Bros. Movie was onto something. Anyway, we're talking about this fantastic sort of organism, this fantastic sort of genre of organism that we don't understand. And we talked about the ants, which provide us with food, and we talk about the ants potentially being farmed by this fungus. What's crazy is that, like, even people, a lot of the receptors for our neurotransmitters, which have been around for billions of years in biology, these funguses and sometimes plants will create chemicals which fit into those neurotransmitters, almost as if it was planned. I don't know. I'm going to talk more about some of this stuff in a later episode. I'm going to get more into the nitty gritty, but I just wanted to do an introductory episode on how freaking cool fungus is. I go out on walks all the time where I do kind of mushroom hunting. I've kind of come to know what species live in my surrounding area so that I'm confident in foraging for them and consuming them. And it's an extremely rewarding pastime for me. So if you are interested in the world of mycology, go out, go start studying, talk to people in your area. There might even be a Facebook group where people post the ones that they find. I know that there's one where I live here in Utah, but anyway, yeah. Mushrooms are freaking cool, fungus is amazing, and mold is awesome. I'm Levi, and this is Outlandish.